This is an assault on everything this country has stood for since the Constitution's been signed.
We are in our dark and dangerous time in America.
It's chilling, and it's scary.
That's censorship. That's state speech control. That's not America.
Completely and totally unacceptable and un-American.
State-sponsored censorship. Full stop. That's what this is.
Super dangerous. What the president's doing is really, really dangerous.
It's hard to understand how unity or a lower temperature comes from either side right now, but Democrats are doubling down on calling Trump and Republicans, in their word, fascist. Their words, not mine. With us now, Mike Nellis, former senior advisor to Kamala Harris, author of the Substack Endless Urgency, now up to 1.2 million subscribers, including me. He will smile when he hears me say that. He's out with a new piece today and says he's going to keep calling Trump a fascist. You and I disagree on that point. That's been well established in our conversation. So I'll ask a different question. Democrats have been calling Trump fascist since 2015. That was what the 2024 election was about. That was one of Kamala Harris's main points. I don't have to remind you, you Democrats lost the 2024 election. Have you considered the possibility, since you want to win elections, that the American people don't buy it and it's counterproductive?
I think the American people now have 9 months more evidence showing that Kamala Harris was right. And this is the point that I made in the piece today, is I'm very sorry for what happened to Charlie Kirk. I'm very sad about it. I view it as an attack on the nation, but I don't view it as something that should change the Democratic Party's posture. Just look at what Trump has done in the last 2 weeks. We're 2 weeks removed from him posting an AI-generated image of my city, the city of Chicago, on fire because he napalmed it at the same time he's promising to invade it. He's using the FCC to threaten to have Jimmy Kimmel and other comedians he doesn't like removed. That is fascism. If it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, you should call it what it is. And then we should get back to focusing on what he's doing that's hurting this country.
I guess that may be my question in terms of where the focus is, whether the focus should be on what Donald Trump is doing or what Democrats will do. This is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and I think it's worth replaying her after the vote on a resolution to condemn the assassination of Charlie Kirk, her talking about Charlie Kirk.
The majority proceeded with a resolution that brings great pain to the millions of Americans who endured segregation, Jim Crow, and the legacy of bigotry today. We should be clear about who Charlie Kirk was. His rhetoric and beliefs were ignorant, uneducated, and sought to disenfranchise millions of Americans.
I'm just asking you from a strategy standpoint. I think you're one of the smartest minds politically on the left right now. That's why I read your stuff every day. How do you win elections that are won on the margins in the middle by insulting the other side's martyr, for lack of a better term?
Well, look, I don't think it's insulting to remind people what Charlie Kirk has said. And I've been on your program quite a lot in the last week since this happened. I've tried to lead with respect and then watch as Republicans have repeatedly blamed people like me for what happened to Charlie Kirk when I don't share any ideology with the shooter. We still really don't know why he did what he did. And we'll get to the bottom of that when there's a trial, which will be sooner than later, I hope. But Ocasio-Cortez is talking about the fact that Charlie Kirk said that the Civil Rights Act was a mistake. He was actively opposed to something that dramatically changed.
But is now the right time?
I mean, look, Republicans are lionizing Charlie Kirk. You said at the beginning that he led the most powerful organization in the history of America. I wrote it down because I think that's a little bit hyperbolic. I think it's fine to memorialize someone who is gone, to feel the way that you're feeling. I'm also mourning this because I think it's an attack on all Americans. But I think Republicans have taken it a step too far where they're trying to whitewash what Charlie Kirk stood for.
Okay. Look, history, and Republicans say this, right? In death, history is flattened. I think that's a fair critique. You started off by talking about how Republicans are now trying to censor and bully and use government power to silence their critics, which I agree is a bad thing in America. And I understand Democrats calling it out. What I don't understand, though, is why Democrats would be against something they did themselves. Kamala Harris, let's be honest, @RealDonaldTrump's Twitter account should be suspended. She said that in September of 2019 when she herself wanted to be president. And then we put together this of those on the left challenging and saying we should use government power, and they wanted to silence those on the right. Take a listen.
You shouldn't be banned from one platform and not others for providing misinformation.
But reducing a liar's reach is not the same as censoring freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is different than freedom of reach.
There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
This is a matter of corporate responsibility. Twitter should be held accountable and shut down that site.
I believe that when it comes to broadcast television, like Fox News, these are subject to federal law, federal regulation in terms of what's allowed on air and what isn't.
Never mind that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez might need a lesson in the difference between broadcast and cable. But why was it okay when Democrats were trying to use government power to censor speech? It's not okay when Republicans do.
Well, Democrats haven't used it. And look, I'm the first Democrat to tell you I think cancel culture went way too far over the last 4 years. But now I think we're going in the opposite direction. We're finding that a lot of conservatives believe in cancel culture. They just want to be able to use it themselves. That's what they want, which is why they're celebrating it. What Trump did here is he used the power of the FCC to threaten the removal of ABC's license to get Jimmy Kimmel, a comedian that he's taken that he doesn't like, off the air. And here's what really bothers me about it, probably more than anything else. You showed a poll to the two gentlemen you had on before, that 40%, that went from 70% of Republicans say we're on the right track, 40% say we're on the wrong track now. And you frame that in the context of the Kirk shooting. Thank you for pulling that up. I appreciate it, 49%. But there is a massive decrease in the way people, particularly under 40, are feeling right now. And that has to do with the economy. It has to do with the inflation. It has to do with the tone and tenor of the direction of the country. And Donald Trump is using the power of the government to go after comedians he doesn't like and not doing anything about inflation, grocery prices, housing, giving people an opportunity to succeed in this economy. That's what bothers me more than anything.
And I am going to blow past the allotted time for this interview and irritate the entire producing team in the control room, because I want to ask you a follow-up question to that. Sure. Then why aren't Democrats talking about that over and over and over again? Why are they spending so much time defending what was a low-rated comedian and complaining about what Donald Trump is doing? Why not talk about the economy and what Democrats are going to do about the economy if you actually believe what you just said?
I think we should be talking about both, because I do believe it is an attack on free speech. I do believe that Donald Trump wants to pull the levers of government to make the country more in his image. He's abusing his power. And at the same time, we need to be talking about what we're going to do to make the economy work for everybody, because people are getting hurt right now. They're getting taken advantage of by a class of people who are making more and more money while people are struggling to buy a house or put food on the table. So you got to do both, because there are fundamental basic freedoms, and one of those freedoms is your ability to succeed in the economy.
Well, when I come on your show, we're going to have a conversation about that, because I agree with you that when fundamental fairness is lost in America, and when people feel the economy is unfair, it's a dangerous time. It's good to see you, Mike, as always.
Thank you, Leland. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.